Welcome back to the Four Gardens podcast. I'm Jake Ifshin. The Four Gardens are an approach I'm developing to cultivate a life of balance, joy, and abundance by focusing on four key areas of life. On this show, I talk to people inspiring me in those four areas of health, nature, creativity, and service. To learn more, go to fourgardenspodcast.com and follow Four Gardens Podcast on Instagram. Make sure to like and subscribe to hear new episodes and help support this project. My guest today is Tristan Montoya, a friend from the DC area, who I recently got to know a lot better when we both attended a Tantra festival in Mexico. Tristan is an intuitive coach and transformational artist that helps people complete their vision by connecting to their genius in a way that feels deeply fulfilling. I'm really excited for this conversation, so let's jump right in. Tristan, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, Jake.
You're a fascinating guy. It was great to get to know you a lot better recently, sharing this Tantra experience and the festival together in Mexico.
It was a wild time, right?
I had a wild time, and I'm grateful to you for bringing that into my awareness. You're really the reason. You posting about it and sharing vulnerably as you do about your journey was really the thing that got me there in the first place.
Yeah.
So I'm excited today to talk about your coaching, your healing journey with your injury, your brain injury, and all the. I've just had some fascinating conversations with you, so I know this is going to be a good episode. A lot for us to cover, but since this Tantra festival is so fresh for us, I thought we could start there and share, because I know we both got a lot of learning, healing, growth from this week we spent in Mexico. And so I'd love to just process it a little bit with you, integrate, and kind of share some of the stories with our listeners. And so maybe we could just start by setting the scene of this story of what a Tantra festival is and where it was. So maybe you could help me with that and share how it came into your awareness and what drew you to it.
Yeah, definitely. As with all things in my life, it happened in a synchronistic way. And if people don't know what synchronicity is, it's basically meaningful coincidences. That's how Jung described it. And my life has been one of many meaningful coincidences, and this was no exception. I met a DJ down in Guatemala, and under very interesting circumstances. I met him not because I went to one of his sets, but because I actually helped one of his friends on the dance floor who had we were trying to resuscitate him. He was actually dying on the dance floor. And I took care of him. We performed CPR on him and tried to resuscitate him, get him back to breathing, and we couldn't get him to breathe again. So he actually died on the dance floor. I was with his body. And when I had to meet this DJ, whose name is Mixwell, I had to introduce myself as the guy who was with your friend in his last moments. And I'll never forget the look on his face. So we met under these circumstances, but of course, there were brighter times, there were happier times. I knew he was a prolific DJ, got to dance to his music and his sets down in Guatemala. And I noticed that he was touring Mexico, and he had a whole Mexico tour set up, and he had a stop in Tepoztlan, Mexico, and he'd be doing a set for the Tantra Festival. And Tepoztlan was already on my map because one of my medicine brothers, who I did an extremely powerful session with, and we can get into that if you like, but that friend went to Tepoztlan and took pictures and said, "This is a magical place. We must come here, do ceremony and host retreats." And so he showed me pictures. It was already in my mind, and I thought, this place is amazing. It's known as a pueblo mágico, so it's a magic village. There's many of them out throughout Mexico, but this one called to me because of the mountainous surroundings, and it had a feel that was very much like Sedona, where my brother lives, and it's a very sacred place to me. My family's from Arizona, my dad's side. So Tepoztlan called me for various reasons. Mainly Mixwell just put out the blast like I put it out for you. I just followed the golden thread as I do in my life, and I followed my highest excitement. So my highest excitement saw Tantra, saw Tepoztlan, saw all the magic. I couldn't see how many people had registered. On Facebook, it looked like just a few had, and I didn't know anybody except the DJ. And I was like, who am I going to meet down there? What's going to happen? I had no idea. But my highest excitement was really activated by this idea. And I thought, well, I'm just going to follow it and see where it goes. So my understanding of Tantra was pretty limited. I'd gone to a couple workshops in Los Angeles, and basically I understood it as meeting any confrontational energy with a lightness, a presence, an acceptance, an allowance. And my handle on Instagram is Art of Allowance, and this is kind of a way I live my life. It's the art of allowing things to unfold. It's meeting any energies that are present with an allowing presence rather than an opposing force. And this is the way I live my life.
It's beautiful. And I also was just following my excitement with this Tantra festival, and I had a different encounter. You posted about it. I had another plan. I wasn't, Tepoztlan was not in my awareness. Tantra is something I'd taken a few workshops on, but I
Mm.
never immersed myself this way. Well, I don't consider myself a Tantra practitioner. Um, I didn't consider myself that going in, becoming one, I think now after this festival. And for me, I had a whole other travel plan to Florida that I was going to do that week. And fortunately, I just booked it. So I was able to change all the plans. And I was just drawn to the workshops. The description online brought me in of, I just saw a list of workshops in dancing. You and I also both are dancers and enjoy ecstatic dance and five rhythms. I saw all the dancing happening with Mixwell, who I know from also Lake Atitlan. Really enjoy his music, and I, but I saw all these workshops on intimacy, on relating, on um, all the ceremonies. It looked just beautiful to me and conscious. And I was calling in, like, my excitement, my golden thread was, how do I deepen my connection to intimacy, to my sexuality, to love and to bliss in my life? And so that all really drew me. And so the marketing was good, but also I think seeing you're someone whose integrity I respect and whose discernment I respect too, and seeing you go, I think gave it some legitimacy to me too, of like, okay, Tristan and seeing Mixwell and some other facilitators I knew of as part of this kind of drew me in. And I had some expectations going in, but they were exceeded and different than what actually happened. And so going into this, did you have any expectations or intentions, maybe is a better word, going into the festival, and how did that flow for you?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Well, if you remember, I set a really powerful intention, and I just flipped through my journal and found it, and just wanted to mention it. But before I do that, I want to recall that the text on the website is really what drew me in as well, because, like I said, I didn't know, I couldn't see from the Facebook group that a lot of people were building excitement around this, and I thought to myself, how? And I reached out to a couple of people I knew in the Tantra community that actually lived in parts of Mexico, and they were like, "No, what Tantra festival?" So they didn't know about it. But what I read was, it said, there was a piece in the copy on the website, and it said, "Are you feeling like you're just not connecting? Are you looking for community and like-minded souls?" And I know
That's
I know that can be kind of generic in a way. Everyone's trying to kind of entice you to join their tribe and their community, but something about this felt very real, and it felt very tangible, like I could reach out and really have that experience. So I followed that excitement around linking up with a tribe, activating this new frequency that wanted to come alive inside of me, and I knew that. I was aware of that. Tantra is about, for me, it's about expression. Dance is a mode of expression, right? It's a way our physical bodies let energy move through us and animate us. And I'm very open and available for that experience. I let my body do things on the dance floor that just amaze me sometimes. But the idea of going into a container with people and having interactions, especially with the opposite sex, really was edgy for me. That was really edgy. I had to kind of touch a place in me that was really deeply wanting intimacy and connection, but wasn't experiencing it in real life. And that was kind of a pain point. And I think that's why it's edgy. It's like I'm pushing into a wound of mine, that's tender. It's not necessarily um, keeping me from living, because I'm acting on it. You see, I'm stepping into it and saying yes. And that's why it was so important for me to honor this and just clear my schedule for a week and put down the investment and just say, I'm doing this. And I remember when I sat, I knew if I'm a big intention setter. This is how I've lived my life. And so I receive the intention. I don't just make it up in my head. I wait and I receive it and I let it come into my heart and then communicate to me in words. And the words that came through were very poetic, and they were very meaningful for me. And so what the intention I set for this experience, for this retreat, is to experience rapturous love, ecstatic bliss, and tender, loving touch.
Lovely.
Yeah, and I would say the interesting thing is that it's coming true. Like a lot of it came true. The tender, loving touch happened, and we can talk a little bit about that.
Cool.
The ecstatic bliss happened on the dance floor. It happened in the moments of connection, and the biodynamic breath work, and the spa experience, and just everything that we did. And then I thought, well, at the end of Saturday, I was like, well, I didn't experience rapturous love. Wonder what that's all about. But then Sunday, I had a very fortuitous encounter with a Mexican woman who just took my breath away. And she wasn't on the retreat, but I stayed an extra night at the property that we were staying at. And there was a holistic bazaar the next day. And that I stayed, I did a yoga session with the owner's wife. We had a beautiful sound bath. We had a beautiful Sunday brunch laid out on the lawn, and I walked over to the same tantric healing space that all the healers were set up during our retreat, and it had been converted into the holistic bazaar, people selling crafts and textiles and things like that. And that's when I laid eyes on this woman who just completely floored me, and we had this magnetic connection for a few moments, and it's leading to something because we're gonna have a call after we finish today. I speak to her, and we discuss what possibly could be the beginnings of a beautiful relationship. So intentions are powerful.
What an incredible example of setting intentions and having, I mean, just any kind of expectations blown out of the water
Yeah,
around what could be delivered. It doesn't sound like you came in with these expectations that were concrete, but rather this intention in your heart and this energy that really served you and the
yeah,
retreat too. And I saw us both. I love the energy we both brought in to this festival too. I also did a pretty good job of letting go of expectations that I did actually witness or at least projected on others of looking for a very specific experience at the festival, a very specific type of romance or connection or sexual experience um, that limited what was possible in the field. Because we were there with 110 people, there with maybe a dozen facilitators, I would say, leading workshops. There's quite a lot of resources and energy in this container, a lot of possibilities. Like noticing that your connection, for instance, happened at the end. Like you didn't come in there and force a connection, or you were so open there. I just witnessed you as very open to everything possible, but also grounded. And I felt like we both stayed grounded throughout this experience with all these energies. I was proud of both of us because it was possible to kind of lose yourself in the energies that were moving through that container. And we stayed grounded on it. And I felt like for me too, I'm doing work in this area I mentioned, and I set this intention to stay with myself, to not similar intentions to you. Also, those words resonated with me, but just to stay with myself, to not fall in love and lose myself, to not to stay and study and be in self-awareness and in connection to myself and in growth. And for me, that really served me of just being able to, what kind of grew out of me of this is realizing too, I shared this in a video with Nil, was in the last podcast, was about my intention of service that I set too, of being of service, taking this tantric idea of service to higher self and seeing sexuality and seeing all the experiences I was having as how am I serving my higher self, my evolution, and also the evolution of other people, other people's best, men and women in the container of how can I show up for others and be there in this transformational container in a way that's supportive, that's healing, that's empathetic, that's um, that's present. And so for me, that brought so much joy to me throughout this, and it allowed me to open to a lot of energies and to new connections as well. New friendships and connections are growing out of this festival for me that I'm really excited about as well. And so yeah, it was a beautiful thing, and it was also a chance for me. I also had an intention to work with shame around it too, and I thought that I was able to witness others and be part of this festival in a way where I wasn't letting shame around sexuality, around connection, or around vulnerability hamper my ability to connect and hamper and slow me down in a way, but not trying to just cut it off or deny it when it showed up, but to sit with it. Because there's just opportunities for that too that were really beautiful as well.
mm, indeed. When you as you share that, what comes up for me is I got to Tepoztlan a day before everyone else, and I spent some time walking around the town. And I wandered through the gates of the old monastery, the old cathedral in town. It's beautiful. I don't know if you got to see
Beautiful
it.
town.
It's beautiful. Behind the walls, there's this
Oh, the
beautiful
cathedral.
garden. Uh-huh. And they've got these gardens inside with fountains, like very Spanish style, very early, you know, colonial style. So inside the gardens, I'm walking around, and I recorded a short meditation while I was in there. But on my way out, I see this sign, and it's written in Spanish, and it says, "To any couples that are caught fornicating," or they used a different word, but doing inappropriate things, they will be turned over to the authorities. And I took a picture thinking, how interesting that I'm about to walk into a retreat, a Tantra festival in the same town where if you're caught doing anything indecent, you'll be turned over to the authorities. And I was going to make a joke like on Instagram or something. This is a sign you will definitely not see at our Tantra festival because here we are in this Catholic country, this conservative country. Many of us have upbringings that were religious in some way, and they were limiting in some way. They limited what we believed about sexuality, what we thought was possible, what we allowed ourselves to do and explore. So here we are on this retreat, and one of the things I had written in my original post that you saw was, I'm still shaking out of my conservative upbringing.
Right.
I'm still wriggling free of that upbringing because it's always there, isn't it, in the background? It's like, I want to go and do a thing. I want to be self-expressed. I want to be open with whatever, however my energy wants to express itself. And then I think, what would my upbringing think? What would my family think? What would the people that know me think? And that's, I think, what we're all looking to evolve out of, in a way, and not in a forced way, but kind of I give myself permission to be who I am and who I'm deciding I want to be in this moment. And the Tantra Festival gave us that space and container to be that.
Very well said. Yeah, I felt that space to it was my process, but I got to bring it to that space where it was welcome to experience these energies in a conscious way, in a way there's no drugs and alcohol there. There's not this interference of the outside world. Even though we're in a Catholic country, we were at this beautiful retreat center that was very safe, felt very nature integrated, well cared for. So it became the safe space to do that work without all these other energies breaking that process up.
Yeah. And of course, the retreat itself, the hotel property, I mean, we did have rules within that. We were It was kind of funny at the beginning of the retreat. They're like, just to let you know, there won't be any public, we won't be publicly like having sex. Let me just say that on air. In the public spaces, right? Because after all, there is a large staff on the property, and they don't need to be exposed to what we're doing. So everything we did was more or less behind closed doors or in the reunion spaces, and we did it in a way that felt very natural. Yes, there were some boundaries set, and there were some kind of rules in place, so to speak, just to give everyone a sense of safety and comfort. But then what we were able to do was explore that sense of connection, that sense of aliveness between two people, and do it in a way that didn't feel icky. It didn't feel like we had to be shameful about anything. It was really just about coming to terms with our own sense of worth. And I think everyone who attended the Love Temple, for example, must have had that experience. I know I did. When we'd walk around in circles, we'd walk around amongst each other, and it's kind of like a standing spin the bottle kind of thing, wherever the music stops, you turn and look at the first person, and you hope that that person wants to be with you, and you hope you want to be with them, and that person doesn't have to choose you, but you stop in front of someone you've made eyes with or had felt a connection with during the retreat, and now they're in front of you, and you're just hoping, choose me, and I'll choose you, and we'll explore this connection. And then they don't, and you find out that they're looking over your shoulder at the guy behind you, and it's a feeling you have to deal with in the moment. And this is one of the reasons I think I found this, and maybe you can say the same. I found this retreat at a good place in my life where I was emotionally stable enough and confident enough in my own self-worth to say, that's okay if you don't choose me. We're not all attracted to one another. We all don't want the same things. I'm okay with you passing me over, because I'll see what that next connection is for me that is available, right?
I mean, I had a very powerful experience with that. That was of, and I'm also grateful that it was my current self showing up and not my younger self for that level of, I did experience that rejection in one of those workshops where, just exactly what you described. And it's actually the experience of that, of just being rejected. And we're talking about most of these partner exercises. We're sharing anything from eye gazing to cuddling to other kinds of touch. And we're moving through exercises and activities as a group in the evening, um, with some boundaries and guidelines. And but still, there's sexual energy in these encounters and romantic energy that can build up. So when you see somebody just totally, when you're either left out of the groups or rejected, I experienced both at certain different times, as well as great connections. But I felt that rejection energy really strongly once, and that was actually an important moment for me to flip into the service intention of like, oh, this hurts, and I know this feeling, and I'm strong enough that I don't need this outside affirmation from everybody to be wanted by everybody to love myself. And actually, I'm going to notice what's happening in the wider container and get out of my hunting mentality for a connection here and and move towards, how can I look around and see who else is, other people are maybe feeling rejected in the circle, they're feeling left out. How can I be more inclusive? If I'm not in a connection, how can I, as a free agent, help people feel better and give my attention and my energy as service towards others? And so that rejection really ended up being a piece of gold for me when I felt that rejection. So I'm glad you named that piece in the circle, because I saw people have all spectrums of experience around that I witnessed in the love temples and in workshops as well during the festival.
Hmm. Thank you for mentioning that. As you do, I just feel a lot more compassion for those people on the periphery, on the people on the outside looking in, who didn't get chosen. Because I remember that. I remember those moments where I was in an embrace with someone I thought was attractive and who I cared for. And I looked on the outside and noticed people didn't have anyone. And they were kind of looking at us with these adoring eyes, like, I want that and I don't have it. And it brings up, I can connect to that compassion now for, the people who didn't receive that nourishment. And I applaud you for being there for them. And I know there were some other emotional support angels around the edges there that were being with those people, because I think at the end of the day, we all want to be loved. And it can become kind of a desperation if we don't get it in the way we think we need it. And those tests are very trying. I mean, that can be a very harsh experience unless there's someone to say, hey, you're okay. You'll be all right. It'll You'll get it the next time. And like, keep coming back. Like there's a lot of things we can say in that moment, but it's just that sense of comfort, putting your hand on someone's back and just letting them know, like, hey, you're not alone.
There's so much service. That's beautiful. There's so much service possible in those moments, in these containers around, because these interactions around attraction and around dating and things like that bring up traumas, rejections that happen can bring up traumas and pain that are so common. Most of us have in some degree or some form of being. And also the human experience of rejection from the group is like one that threatens safety inside. To be rejected from the group, exile meant death. I think for our ancestors going back for many societies, it was, uh, I think there's an innate fear in humans of rejection and being not chosen, um, reproductively too. And I think that's that to overcome that, there's this opportunity to help others, but there was also this opportunity for me to go within and feel that energy when it came up, to witness. When I felt that rejection that one time, I really got to go in and say, I don't need this. I have this love inside. And also, what other growth is possible alone right now? And actually, I took a moment, and I think you and I were sitting together. We both stepped out and we witnessed all the different types of connection in the room being shared. There was many different flavors of intimacy or of love being shared, and just to be like, you know what, it's actually, this is my chance, this moment, to work with the shame of witnessing others. That I always look away. When a couple is making out, I don't pull up a chair and watch them. Like, that's not what I've been conditioned to do in the society. It's like, oh, that's a private act. But actually, this couple is making out in public and they're inviting. Actually, it might be part of their pleasure. And I can ask them for consent to witness them. And I did ask a few groups, so can I just witness you what you're doing? And they were very welcoming. Well, 2 out of 3 were pretty welcoming of that. One was clear they wanted something a little more private. And just to sit there and witness too was a shame reprogramming exercise for me. It was just this chance to breathe, to put my hand on my heart, to be like, I'm just going to witness this beautiful love. This is a beautiful thing that I'm seeing. And my witnessing, this was a transmutation of just the male gaze of looking for pleasure. And instead it was a transmutation, and it was actually a witnessing of deep connection and human love that I could feel in my heart. And so that was this beautiful exercise I did just on my own. And so this was an example for me of what's available. I don't need support from outside because of what I have from inside, my internal resources. And that was what I was proud of. I witnessed that in you too, as you move through your experience of you leaning on your internal resources to have the best experience and most healing experience for you possible.
Yeah. And I remember what you said to me in that moment. And I told a crowd at breakfast one day what you'd said in that moment. Here we were, the way I experienced it was we were observing a room full of strangers. I mean, we had just come into contact with these people a couple of days ago, but we're seeing a room full of strangers being sensual with each other. Some in pairs, some in threes, some sandwiches of four, and we were observing this whole room of all these things happening, all this sensuality going on. And I remember you saying, "I need to sit here for a minute because I'm imprinting my psyche with a new experience." And whatever, I loved that, and I wanted to say that for everyone's benefit who's listening, because we all have an impression, and that's the right word because it's been impressed upon us of what we think is right and normal. And when we see something like this in a space, in a container, because that's what it is, we call it a container because we've created a space where there's safety in this container, where there's a space to let anything new come up that wants to be experienced and felt. And we, as witnesses, because we weren't chosen, so to speak, my partner actually wasn't comfortable with the closeness, and she needed to break away for a little bit and go outside, and that could have left me feeling rejected. But instead I thought, okay, we had a nice moment of connection. She needed to be by herself. I'm going to honor that. I'm going to sit on the periphery with Jake and just observe. And then I noticed that little phrase that you said helped me just kind of take in the moment, drink it in a little bit more, and just imprint my own psyche with, yeah, this is my new normal, to use a phrase that's being thrown around right now because of our unusual circumstances in the world. But we're in a changing atmosphere right now. We're in a world that is undergoing drastic and radical change. And
Absolutely.
it's time to introduce ourselves to these more out there experiences. I'll tell you, nothing was more apparent to me than going from that beautiful, glowing, magnetic energy that we created back to the DC area. It's like, like the brakes were just thrown on into my magic, and I had to kind of come back to reality, so to speak. And it's all reality, isn't it? But we're always creating reality. But currently, this is where I've been doing my healing. This is where I'm from, the East Coast, and this is where I came back to do some deep healing. Would I choose to make a life here? Probably not. Do I see myself staying here? No, I don't. But I'm here, and so I have to accept my circumstances as they are, and see the best in it. But what was born out of this retreat was a desire to do more, to be more, to experience more, to be in a place that truly, that one of my mentors calls your genius zone. I want to be in a place that makes me feel alive. And what was very obvious about coming back was that I'm not exactly in my genius zone here, but it's been a great container for my growth and healing.
Thank you for sharing that. And just the last thought on the tantra retreat, because I really want to shift to your bigger the conversation in a minute, to your bigger healing journey, the long term. I'm excited to share that for the listeners too, and hear it myself of the, because I've heard different pieces of the big healing journey you've been on over the last year. So I want to leave some fair bit of time for that. But just some last closing thoughts on the Tantra Festival is I'll share that what what's coming up for me listening to you too is reminding myself that Tantra is part of yoga and is yogic, and the work we were doing in that love temple, as well as returning to DC, staying with ourselves and observer consciousness, is yoga. That to me is my yoga practice. My breath work is helping me, whether I'm in a love temple, feeling shame, feeling discomfort, feeling heart, feeling moved emotionally by what I'm with, whatever it is, I'm able to witness that, witness uh, myself and witness the community, witness the energies without judging, without getting swept up, staying in that that piece. And I had a hard time too coming back. I went back to DC as well and was laid up with a stomach virus after sharing all that connection and love, to then go home and be sick and it would be cold. It really challenged me as well. Coming back, my integration was challenging. Um, but it showed me the work I need to do to stay in equanimity, to stay in acceptance, to art of allowance. Just going back to your name, to allow. I think was just it's just been my work too. So I'm doing you're doing my work there. Sounds like I'm
Mm.
doing yours. Um, unless, do you have another last thought on the Tantra Festival before we? Oh, actually, maybe we should say a little bit about the powerful experience we both had, to go even a little spicier before we close on this, of the tantric massage we each received from Carolina. So do you want to touch on that before we go?
Yeah, I don't think we have to go. I think it's a beautiful segue,
Yeah,
and
let's
and
segue
and,
there.
and I'll tell you why. Because it all has to one has to do with the other, and I think this is an important piece for a lot of people who are at a crossroads in their life. They're at a period where uh, they don't feel quite ready for those new experiences, and we all have trauma. So let me just speak to what I'm actually referring to, and it's trauma. It's stored emotion. It's stored pain. And what kept me the situation, the experience with Carlina was profound. And let me just preface this conversation by saying that part of me wanting to go to this tantra retreat was my deep desire for connection, for intimacy, and what that leads to in my mind is relationship. It's a profound and lasting relationship with a woman who I can share my life with and share myself and my being with. I want to share my being. I want to experience sacred union. I do. I've had enough sex in my life to last a lifetime. I don't need more sex. I don't need more meaningless connection. I'm looking for the most meaningful connection possible. And at this point, I was asking myself deep questions. What would it take for me to be ready for this sort of partnership? Am I ready for this sort of partnership? I don't want to get into, I've created drama all my life, and that has to do with some of my shadows, and it has to do with my actually the functioning, or I should say, the poor functioning of my brain while it was injured. I responded to life in a certain way because of my brain injury. I kept distance from people, and especially close relationships, because of my brain injury. I'm only learning that now in hindsight. In hindsight, I can look back and I say, oh, that's why I created the protective mechanisms. That's why I isolated so much. That's why I could only have quick, amorous, passionate relationships and then pull away. I was a great lover. I mean, I'll just put that out there. I mean, I have been a great lover. I've had very passionate romances
I'll add
with.
that to the show notes too.
Yes, exactly. Um, and I'm off the market, but no, I haven't. We haven't confirmed, but I've met a very beautiful woman, and it's all a result of the work we did with Carolina. So let me circle back to that and just say that in order to prepare myself for a relationship and be ready for the level of partnership that I was calling in, and the openness and the intimacy and the readiness in my heart, the responsibility to really step into that level of partnership and compromise, because that's a big one for me, Jake. I've been a single, somewhat of a solitary man a lot of my life, and when you live that way, you don't compromise very much.
Oh, I know.
So here, if I'm going to share my life, my finances, et cetera, a home, vehicles, responsibilities, all these things with a woman, with a life partner, then I need to learn how to compromise, and I need to come into that beautiful give and take, that interplay. And I needed to learn, and Tantra speaks to that. Tantra is that. It's the interplay. It's exploring the energies and the relationship. And so here I was in this experience at the Tantra Festival. I had browsed the website to see the facilitators. I had seen a very attractive Polish woman who was offering massage, and I thought that'd be a great experience. And I didn't pull the trigger right away. I just thought, oh, I'll get to it when I get to the festival. But you having booked beforehand was a little impetus for me to say, oh, you know what, I should do this before she gets booked up, because I had in mind to do this experience early on in the retreat, in just in case it opened up a lot, then I'd have time to process and integrate. So I scheduled it on a Wednesday, which was just the second day of the retreat, and ended up having just a mind blowing experience. And we so interestingly, and this is just a little side note, this is the interestingly the same little archway that there were these um, there was this space, this pavilion space where the tantric healers were set up, because you had your session there during the retreat. In that very same space on Sunday, after the retreat had cleared out, this is where the holistic bazaar vendors were set up, and this is where the woman I met was standing, tending to her booth. She sells a line of natural cosmetics and products uh, for all kinds of different things. She uses a lot of bee pollen and things like that. So I meet her under the same arches that this tantric healing was taking place, where all that magic was building and developing over those days. And then I was guided to just have. Actually, what happened was Carolina came to me and she said, it's going to be a little cold when you booked at 6 o'clock p.m. because the sun's gone down. We're surrounded by mountains. It's going to get quite chilly. You won't be comfortable. So do you think we can use your room for this? And I actually had two twin beds in my room. I had a roommate. I had to make sure that I had that space for an hour and a half. And once I cleared the space and asked him politely if he wouldn't mind giving me that time, we created such a beautiful atmosphere. And I think that's what I needed to really let go. I needed to be in a kind of a space that I helped design, had a hand in. I needed the candlelight. I needed the close the insulation, so to speak, kind of those protective walls around me. And and then what we did is we entered into this beautiful experience where I completely allowed myself. We spoke yesterday, Carlene and I, and she said something to me that she hadn't said before, and she said, "Thank you for surrendering to me." She said, "Because what happened in our session was I felt you completely surrendered, and you allowed your inner child to come out, and I wept, man. I wept.
Wow.
I've wept before, but usually during medicine ceremonies, plant medicine, and usually on the floor curled up in a ball by myself, like in front of a fire or something like that, just kind of tending to myself and letting myself purge. But I did this in the presence of a woman, and a beautiful woman, mind you, and one that I didn't know, right? We had just met her. But I felt a closeness and I felt a safety with her, and I felt very much I felt safe to open, and I felt safe to have this experience and have her witness that experience. And during the whole experience, what I can tell you is that during the experience, I was having internal visions, and they were extremely clear. And they related to a vision that I've often had from my own life of seeing myself in partnership, seeing myself with a family, even seeing myself enjoying prosperity and being alive in my body and enjoying all that life has to offer. And so this vision was rich and it was lucid, and I was experiencing it while I had a beautiful woman close to me. And even though I'm with this beautiful woman, I'm seeing my vision of what could be possible, and I could see myself in partnership. And I started to allow that experience, and I started to grieve what had kept me from having that experience all these years. And when it occurred to me that it was the state of my own mind, it was actually due to my brain health. When I realized that I denied myself of physical touch, which is one of my love languages, by the way, I denied myself from being touched and having this closeness and this level of intimacy that I knew I desperately wanted. But I hadn't given that to myself because it didn't feel safe. I didn't feel like I was ready to let a woman see me in all my weirdness, all my damage, all my vulnerability. I had kept up a proverbial shell for so long, and while I could have these brief, passionate romances, I would always pull back. And it's funny because the woman I'm speaking to now, she sent me this little clip on. She wanted me to listen to 4 things you need to consider before choosing a partner, and it was in Spanish, and one of the little sound bites that I heard was "Los hombres huyen," and that means men take off. so it's, it's not entirely untrue, but I don't want to be the guy who flees anymore. I want to be the guy who stays, and I feel like this session prepared me for that. It opened me. It literally, the words I heard in my mind, they were literally, it was like a loud call from within me. It's like, you are being prepared for partnership, and this goddess that is performing this sacred ceremony with me, right, is helping deliver this possibility to me. She's helping she helped to open the gates for me to be ready for partnership. And I looked at her when all was said and done. We sat cross-legged and faced each other, and I had a candle between us so I could just see her features and her face, and I just looked her straight in the eyes with tears running down my face, and just said, "Thank you. You have given me the gift of a lifetime, and I'm forever grateful. And your work is sacred and beautiful, and I honor you."
Blessings on Carolina, and thank you so much for sharing that journey you had with it. I've heard a little before of your experience, but just to hear that, I really feel moved by how much healing you received in that, and how deep you went. And it also landed, um, for me, some of the words you said of surrender and compromise. Um, Man, those hit home, because I feel those too, of the challenge of compromising, the challenge of surrendering. It's been a challenging year for me with dating and surrendering and letting go, especially as a year of much travel and nomadic living. But it's been deeper than that for me, of just feeling that like it's been hard for me to compromise and surrender. It's been hard for me to let go, as I feel like I'm becoming more aware of myself and my energies and my impact on others. It's just been hard to, I've been trying to rewrite patterns of sexuality, of how my sexuality is expressed, how my energy moves through my body. And this massage, you described it really beautifully, of the parts of it, of the intimacy that's shared. And while sexual energies you're receiving a massage, but it's not, you don't have a sexual release in this massage. You don't have your energy, like she moves the sexual energy through you. I'm using the word energy a lot. And so people have different relationships with that word, but I could feel that arousal would come up for me, and she would redirect that through my whole body. And I could feel, this is getting into a very like alternative language, but I could feel that channel clear for me. This, that I was getting to surrender. This is pretty much a woman I've talked to 3 or 4 times before this massage, very intimate massage. And to get to do this work, it was hard for me the first hour of just letting go and breathing. I used a lot of my breath practices just to let go, and to just to be present with this, and not to just to fully surrender, because you're just receiving a massage. You're not giving her any touch. You're not allowed to touch her. That's like part of the container for me, is that you don't touch, you receive, I receive. So art of allowance again. And that was my practicing my art of receiving, of just not being in control of the situation. Because that's often another shadow for me in intimacy, is wanting to feel safe and in control, which are equal to me. If I'm in control, I'm safe. I can control, or I pull back if things get to be, like many men, if they get to be out of my control or too intense or too vulnerable. And so this chance to really sit with this for 2 hours, I think it was, to sit with, to receive for 2 hours, to feel the channel cleared, and at the end, just one other piece that stood out for me in this was, um, sitting across from her, and also just cutting with our hands, doing this little karate chop, and cutting the attachments that were formed, cutting the projections that were formed on each other, that are so powerful when we're talking about sexual energy or healing work. And it worked for me. After this, I received this. I could feel this integration of my whole body, of my energies. Uh, the rest of the day, the rest of the retreat, it kind of stayed with me. This feeling that I was integrated, that I'd moved some shame, and that I was just more comfortable surrendering, that I wasn't feeling this blockage anymore, that had made it harder for me to open up and to date and to relate to women. I just felt this shift in my energy that was profound. And I didn't have this quick, I'm not saying it was a quick opening for you, but I'm just beautiful witnessing how you went to tears and to depths during the experience. For me, it was this, it was harder for me to get there, but it kind of rippled through me. It was like stayed with me. It took me dancing, and it took me talking about it, to even like let this flow, this integration, happen for me. So doing my best I can with my vocabulary to really express a spiritual experience. And I thought you did a beautiful job. But yeah, we'll get Carolina on the podcast soon. She wants to come. I've invited her to come on to kind of talk about the practice that she shared with the tantric massage. But I'm glad we got to integrate it on the
Yeah,
podcast here for a few minutes.
absolutely. And I think the beauty of that experience is that everyone's going to have their own private and profound and personal experience, and no two are going to be alike. Yours is going to be, I mean, you're everything you've lived is brought into that session. Everything, every experience, every relationship you've had comes to this point, this beautiful crescendo where she meets you where you are. And yes, you relax and you receive, and there's no touching, because what do we want to do in our life? We want to control, right? And we control by applying our pressure, applying our power, our force to others. But there's a beautiful act of receiving that actually creates the intimacy and the surrender and the vulnerability. And I've had two of these types of tantric massages in my life. Both have brought me to tears in a profound way. Where the first one I had was actually in Nicaragua, and I was shaking when she left the room. She said, I was still naked on the floor, and she said, she just touched me lightly on the shoulder, and she said, "I'm gonna go now." And my whole body just started shaking, and I just started crying, because I was like, I was so exposed, literally. I mean, not only was I stark naked in the middle of a tent, but I was so exposed emotionally. I'd opened myself up, and it those experiences change a man. And what Carolina did, I mean, the reason that when the tears started streaming, it was really, I mean, yes, she touched my lingam. Yes, that she redirected that sexual, yeah, there was an arousal. Yes, there was. I can say that. But as you said, there's no release and it's not sexual. She redirected that energy as well. And it wasn't the touch on my lingam that did it for me. It was the touch of her hand over my heart. And
Yes. Yes.
when her hand was placed over my heart with the utmost care and
Yes.
gentleness, that is when I just melted. I just melted. And that's when I just started sobbing. It started off with a little stream, and then before long I was in fetal position, just hurling and sobbing. And
Amazing.
yeah,
Yeah, it was a dance with my whole body that she did. It was a dance with the whole body that really brought the energy to the heart and to the head for me too. It brought it up. But yes, that's beautiful the way you put it. But it was a full body integration
yeah,
thing, and just yeah, I love hearing. It's bringing back the memories of that. So I'm feeling grateful hearing about that. Yeah, yeah. So also feels vulnerable. I want to name that, sharing about this and sharing this publicly on this conversation we're having. I really feel like I'm feeling inspired right now. I just led a men's circle last night around sexuality and service. Some of the things, the way I'm integrating this tantra experience is to do my work more publicly, and I'm inspired by the way you publicly shared about your journey, sexuality, as well as other areas of your life that are very personal. And I think that the work we're doing, bringing this to men in particular, is I know a shared inspiration for us. But I feel like there's some having these public conversations is part of my mission too now, and I think yours too, of helping to bring the ability and the space to talk about these things to the collective. There's so much healing to do and change, and so I see that as part of, for me, when I talk about service here, I see us doing that work right now of service and sharing this, and hoping that other people out there are listening and inspired to take that next step of opening, of healing, of communication, of surrender. So setting that intention with this conversation right now.
absolutely. My first mentor, I'm not sure if you know this, but when I did my coaching training, I studied with the Ford Institute, which was founded by Debbie Ford, who's now deceased. She actually passed away while I was in her program. She died of cancer, but before that, she founded the Ford Institute, and she wrote 10 books. And Debbie dealt with addiction for much of her early years, and she used to say something that's often said inside of the rooms of AA, and that is that you are only as sick as your secrets.
Wow.
And what I feel when I see the state of the world today, I see a sick society, and I see a society that's sick with secrets. We are sick with our own conditioning, with our own taboo, with our own inability to express ourselves and be who we are. And it's coming out in every facet of our existence. In our modern day society, What we think is normal is actually abnormal. It's actually dysfunctional to a high degree. It's just not enough people are willing to say that. They're not willing to speak to it. And so we live in dysfunction, perpetually repeating the same problems, unable to learn from them. And as Alan Watts once said, the only thing we can learn from history is that we don't learn from history. So let us not repeat this. Let us be open. My mission is to be open. And Jake, as we talked about before this, I'm not here to pitch myself as the next guru, the coaching success here.
Yeah.
I'm not here to currently, due to my brain injury, I haven't been coaching men or anyone for that matter. I took some time off to heal. And as I approach, interestingly, my chosen career, my chosen vocation, which was integrative life coaching, it was facilitating workshops and breath work and emotional healing, all kinds of these kinds of experiences that I was doing, I had to step back from because I just couldn't take on other people's stuff anymore. And as I reassess my situation and look at where I can be of service, what calls me forward is helping others find expression. And all I can do is lead from example. That's all I can do. I'm not here to spout theories. I'm not here to speak from my intellect. It's interesting because I'm contemplating the Gene Key 62 right now because I'm in a course with Richard Rudd and the Gene Keys. And the 60-second Gene Key is the gift is actually precision. It's the precision of awareness. It's having the ability to see the interconnectivity of everything. But the shadow of the 60-second Gene Key is actually intellect. And this is a big one for me. And there's a lot of irony in that for me because I did have a brain injury. My intellect, my brain was injured. I couldn't think the same way I used to think. I couldn't do the things I used to do. My obsessiveness was kind of the harbinger. Like that was the thing that called attention to my brain injury, to my mental illness. Let's just call it what it is. I had mental illness for a long period of time. And what brought my attention to it was that I was obsessive in a lot of ways. I would consume information. I would pour through books. I would memorize quotes. And for me, I was building up my armament. I was building up my intellectual powers. But when it all caved in on me, I was left with in a state of desperation, really. I was in quite a vulnerable state for a while, thinking that I just lost everything I worked so hard to gain, all my training, all my studies, all the memorization, all the theories, all the concepts, all the things that I thought I knew went out the door. I still recall these things. They're not lost to me, but I realized I didn't need to hold them in my consciousness with such a force. I could actually go back into my heart space and I could remember that I already know a lot because I'm connected to this knowingness, this divinity that's inside of me that's actually wanting to be birthed through my intellect. I was listening to Richard Rudd last night and I love what he said. He talked about the idea of gnosis, and the gnosis is using the mind to overcome the mind.
That's really cool. I hadn't heard that definition. It's really beautiful. Yeah, no, I could use some gnosis, more of that in my life. That's powerful, a powerful tool. And I wonder if are you open to an invitation, Tristan, from me of I'm feeling into how this conversation, we're getting close to an hour, how I want to create a second episode with you. My invitation would be to let's give it a fresh hour and tell the story because I felt moved by your healing journey, hearing about it in our past conversations, and I feel like it deserves its own episode and because of its complexity and the depth you approached it with. So I just want to see how you'd feel about taking that conversation and giving it its own part two of this, because I feel like this Tantra conversation we have is its own conversation. This needed its own hour to process and to come fresh with you and to tell that story would be really my privilege and pleasure to do that. So I want to see how that lands with you.
I love that idea. I really do. And I think it would benefit. I would really offer that from a place of deep service. One of the most healing things that I did for myself during my healing, I did a 6-month regimen of healing prescribed by a doctor, a psychologist, psychiatrist rather, who had seen my brain scan and who gave me a plan for treatment and recovery. And about halfway through that treatment. My brain wasn't healed, by the way. I hadn't even started with the hyperbaric oxygen chamber yet, but I started to make headway, and I wanted to put everything that I was learning into a piece that people could use and that they could benefit from. So I wrote a long piece on Medium. It's a long article, very detailed, lots of tools and things there. And it's all there for people who are dealing with what I dealt with, whether it's a traumatic brain injury, whether it's mental illness or depression in some form, or whether it's just heightened anxiety from living in this very busy sense of the world that we live in with so much overstimulation. So I accept your invitation, and I
Thank you,
really
Tristan.
would like to give this the space it deserves because it was a very nuanced journey, and it was very spiritual, in fact, to go through this because I was at the beginning of this year in March. I was ready to sit down and write a book, and I was going to write this magnificent allegorical novel that kind of featured me as the main character, but I was gonna write with a character's name and kind of tie in a lot of the experiences I've had. But what took me away from writing that book was this huge initiation that I underwent, working with the gene keys, unlocking a lot of my shadows that I hadn't even known about. And I've been doing shadow work for 15 years. And all of a sudden it opened up something in me. I went through this massive initiation, but as much as it brought me up into this expanded state, it also brought me down to reality because I knew right then, oh my God, there's this awareness I've had that there was something inside of my brain that wasn't quite right. It brought me back to traditional medicine, and I had to go and do something that I almost never do, and that's go to a doctor and say, "Hey, can you take a look at me and tell me what's going on? Because I'm out of answers. I've tried everything. You and I started with ice baths, and I did every form of alternative healing that I knew about, and nothing worked. And so there is a long process that I went through, and it may not be the exact steps that someone else will take, but I think there could be a lot of rich information in there for other people to
I know there
glean.
is. Yeah, I know there is, and I felt it. So the first time you told me about your healing journey, in some depth actually was last year, about a year ago, and I had a friend visiting who was going through mental health challenges and concerns about his brain health, and emotional health, real serious stuff. And he overheard, and you brought him into the conversation. He heard a lot of the what you were saying, and he was pretty electrified by your story. It was like I could see the energy in him of the reaction of wow, like that guy, his reaction was like, whoa, listening to you talk about it. And it was beautiful to see how, I mean, it's just powerful. The story, just straight up what you went through is of service to offer that. I know that. That's why I feel like, oh, this is worth, I don't want to squeeze this into a 10-minute, 20-minute clip. Like there's just
Yeah,
too much there. There's a whole book you already
yeah,
mentioned. And so at least a minimum of another hour episode would feel in integrity to tell
yeah,
that story because it's such an important one. There's so many people healing from mental health and deep emotional um, wounds like that. But yours is really a mental health brain injury story that you cuts across alternative medicine. This is the teaser we're making right now. The teaser is cuts across from traditional medicine to alternative medicine across the world, experiences you had. So it's going to be a beautiful episode that I really encourage everybody who enjoyed this episode to look out for that coming out soon. We'll schedule it.
yeah. And that's really the only, you know, pitch that I think can be made out of that is here's what I will say. I think this is important to mention. I was on a Five Rhythms retreat with Ann Kite, our favorite dance instructor,
Check out our
and
episode. Got to plug that.
yeah, and a great episode. And I know she was a guest, and she runs these retreats sometimes in West Virginia. That was the one I was on, and I was in a cabin, a shared cabin with some other people, and I got to know this young person. It's a they them situation. So I got to know this person, and they it's tough to speak like this, but at the end of the experience, they came up to me and said, "Would you mentor me?" And I said, "Really? I, I didn't barely tell you what I do." And they said, "It doesn't matter. I saw what you told. I heard what you told me about your healing journey, about what the discipline it took you to recover, and that's what I want. That's what I'm after. Like that's what I want to know how to do for myself." And I thought that was interesting because all these years I've prided myself on my training and this and my credentials and my all these things that I've done, these things I can prove, these and client testimonials, and they said, it's your healing journey, it's your recovery that is the testimony. That's the best testimony. And so I say that because if I get back into this coaching work, and I believe I will, I've got one of my old swim coaches actually looked me up the other day and wants to consider coaching with me. If I get into it, it will be because I'm matched with the right people at the right time, and that is the perfect as the perfect arrangement, as Richard Rudd calls it, the cosmometry. The perfect cosmic order of things is when people start to find you because they resonate with your message, with your teachings, with your genius, with those lessons that are they witness in you. They see how those activated in you, and they know that those are available for them. And this is the cosmic order, and this is how fractals and people within their soul groups, you could call them, find one another through this resonance. And so I'm drawing in people through this resonance, through my life experience. And that's really the best gift I can give.
Thank you for giving that gift. And I like following along with your coaching journey too. I'm considering how to best help people and guide people, mentor people in my life, and have experiences with that too. So hearing the way you're letting it come to you, you're not forcing it, you are letting the fractal develop and unfold, and the right mentees, the right clients are coming to you, will come to you, and blessing your next chapter of coaching. I know it's been a path for you that we'll talk about in the next episode, but I'm also excited for the next chapter of coaching with all the work you've done, all the gifts you have to share and wisdom that you've and surrender and healing, everything that we've talked about, how you're going to be able to bring that to your future clients and mentees.
Yeah, definitely. And the last thing I'll say, you had a podcast with a guy named Andy, and I didn't get to listen to it, but I noticed it was broken up into two parts, and he helped you craft a mission statement. And I think that's great because one of the most powerful experiences I've had in the past year was I was working with a peer group. We were doing a coherence training. We were actually teaching people how to do coherence, how to do coherence meditation and vocal toning. And we decided to come up with what's called a massive transformative purpose, an MTP. And it's a 2-page worksheet. I'm not sure how he did it for you. I didn't get to listen to those yet. But I worked with the 2-page sheet until I refined my purpose down to this very powerful statement. And just to give people an idea, the MTPs are what Google and SpaceX and Tesla have used to launch into literally outer space. These powerful words can catalyze and alchemize into these potent statements that can literally launch you into a new stratosphere. I spent some time distilling mine down, and what it came down to, Jake, are these few words: human beings must be self-expressed.
Human beings must be self-expressed.
With an emphasis on the must. Yes.
That seems very integral to who we are and what we are, and
Yes.
perhaps all life.
Yes. And I say that I think I close with that because it's really up to me. I'm taking personal responsibility, and I suppose I'm accountable to the listeners and to you by stating this in public. That also means that I must be self-expressed. And I've been holding back my expression. I've been holding back my writing and my creative output. And, I want to acknowledge Melly, one of your past guests as well, for speaking into creative expression and really finding outlets and getting past our perfectionism and prioritizing art. Because those two things are actually I was quite impressed with her when she told me she was getting into creative coaching, because I'd spent all these years with all these concepts and ideas. And then she goes, yeah, I just focused on two things: perfectionism and prioritization. And I was like, these millennials, man, that it's brilliant. I mean, it's brilliant. And if you do focus on those two things and walk people through those blocks around those two things and the awareness around those two things, so much can occur. And so I really benefited from that episode. And I made a little note for myself, like, where am I holding myself back? How can I prioritize art every day? Just like I prioritize exercise and things like that. It made a lot of sense. So thank you for that episode and bringing that to life and bringing out and doing the journey yourself. I know you went through some coaching with her and are seeking to express yourself in new ways, and that's great.
Yeah. Melly helped me a lot and definitely recommend her. Thank you for listening to the episode and bringing that back, because that's a powerful medicine that she has for me, which was, we talked about blockages, but I don't think this podcast would exist without her, because my perfectionism and my procrastination and my uh, fears that I'm not naming, all these unconscious things that are in me and I'm in many people, stopping us from full expression, uh, are real. And she really helped me talk through and bring those into the consciousness, bring them into the light, so that they weren't blocking me anymore. And now here I am. This is the 22nd episode, or the 21st that we release of this podcast. And so, this is one of the big, this is what, when I talk about why I want to have so many powerful coaches on this show, like you, coaching is real. Talking through these things, processing them, getting support, is getting guidance, is I need it. I still rely on coaches, and to me, it's like my pleasure and privilege to get to bring these coaches the awareness of coaching and the awareness of mentorship into my community. Like that's a gift for me and a part of my service in the show.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it speaks to the fact that this is a very simple and obvious truth for me, and I hope it's clear and apparent for others, is that we need each other. We all need each other, and we can't do it alone. And the gift that I'm just speaking to the listeners now, the gift that you have may be something someone else needs. And so why hold it back? Release that gift, cultivate that gift first. I mean, really, the question I want to really pay homage to Richard Rudd, because his level of depth is like nothing I've ever seen. How deep he's gone, and one of the questions he's having us sit with is this question of, how can I nourish myself first before I create an offering and put my service out there to the world? How can I nourish myself first? And what that brings me back to, Jake, is I sat with this last night, and the first word that came up was safety, and so I explored that a little bit. What does safety mean for me? And what safety meant was really trust. It meant a trust in the cosmic order of things. And the way I've lived my life, and we can get more into this in the next episode, but the way I've lived my life is through symbols, symbolism, the connectedness, synchronicity, signs on my path, numerology, numerical symbols and signs on my path, consecutive numbers appearing. All of these things represent, even the particular dates. I can tell you about this particular dates of certain things happening. I met possibly the woman that may become a partner for me. I met her on a 3-day. It was the 21st. 2 + 1 = 3. Her birthday is 111, also a 3. And these interesting little synchronicities that happen, that bring us together with people and circumstances and situations that are beneficial to both of us, represents the cosmic order of things. And when we can trust in the beauty and the intelligence of life itself, and let life be your teacher. That's my catchphrase for today. Let life be your teacher, because it's teaching all of us, and it's leading us, and it's guiding every one of us. We just have to be open to it. And that comes back to the precision of awareness at the 60-second gene key, having a beautiful precision of awareness to see things as they are, without the smoke screen of our emotions and our projections and our thoughts about how we think things are, just to see them as they are. And this beautiful interconnectivity, this web of connected events and people, that's beautifully designed by divine intelligence. And we don't have to do anything except be aware and walk courageously through this life, following the golden thread, living our best life.
Amazing. Thank you. I think that's a beautiful piece to end on, that wisdom. Thank you for sharing that. If people want to connect with you, I can share your links below. Is there anything else any offerings you have coming up, or anything else you want to mention before we close out today?
The only thing I want to say is what I've just said. Live your best life. Live your best life, and don't let anybody's opinion or projection or expectation weigh upon you. Free yourself, liberate yourself from all of that weight, and just be you fully.
Right on, man. You just like some mic drops here. So thank you thank you again for coming on and sharing. And it's really been a pleasure to interview you and get to know you better today, Tristan. And it really helped me, this conversation, to integrate and and to understand this experience we shared this week together in Mexico. So I'm just, that was a gift to me. So I'm grateful to you.
Thank you, Jake. It was potent medicine that we shared. I'm so glad you said yes to your higher excitement and you showed up there, because it was great to have a brother there. And it was great to have this shared experience through Carolina and through the week itself, and then to be able to unpack and integrate. So thank you for this space that you've created to have this conversation.
You're welcome. And it's what I do. I love doing this, and it's a co-creation. So thanks for making it with me.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on the show.
That was my conversation with Tristan Montoya. Wow, I love that one. Feeling that energy from that conversation. So follow Tristan at Art of Allowance on Instagram, and follow Four Gardens Podcast on Instagram too. Just building that platform up more and sharing clips from all the episodes. Well, you can find out more about our new workshop for the New Year's coming out there on Instagram or on our website. All the links are below. Look for part 2 with Tristan coming out soon. We'll get that one out. I'm excited to tell more of his story and get back into this conversation with him and keep going. It's just, again, thanks for listening, and keep on growing.